So there's a little pink in America who calls himself Captain Cool 07, and basically he's got a bee in his bonnet about me. Because apparently I have some evil, diabolical agenda to sort of strip the Malaysian Chinese of their heritage and make them lose their roots and culture. But I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, nothing could be further from the truth. Frankly, I don't give a rat's ass whether or not you teach your children Mandarin or classical Chinese culture or whatever, and I really could not give any more of a rat's ass if you send them to vernacular schools. But what I don't like is this holier-than-thou sanctimonious attitude that I see in some members of the Chinese diaspora. You know, go on like, oh, you must send your children to vernacular school at least for the first 6 years. You don't want them to lose touch with their heritage and become bananas. You know, as if a Malaysianized Chinese who went to government school, Sekolah Kebangsaan, since day one, is somehow a deficient, degenerate type of Chinese if they don't know how to read Chinese or speak Mandarin. Neither of my parents knows how to read Chinese. They're all English educated. But the point is, if you feel that your Chinese identity politics are so important to you, look, that's your own business, okay? No one is stopping you from learning the language or getting in touch with your culture. But don't presume that every other Chinese person is as interested in it as you are, okay? There are other things I'd rather spend my free time doing, my limited amount of free time, like playing sports, having sex, or pumping weights at the gym. There are a dozen other things I would rather do than language learning because it's not particularly interesting to me. But believe it or not, that is not actually a personal insult to you. Yeah, just because people like different things doesn't mean that they hate what you do, okay? I'm not interested in golf. Does that mean that I hate golf? No, I'm just indifferent to it, okay? So you stay in your lane and stop trying to police what other Chinese people should be. Go get some hobbies. Actually, go do some fun stuff that extends beyond your obligation to your ancestors who are dead and can't even hear you. And then maybe we'll be able to get along, okay, Chinese Ultra? I can't understand why you have some diasporites who look so shocked and horrified. You can even see the hatred in their eyes when you tell them, you know, good for you if you want to learn Mandarin, but you know, my free time is limited, and I'd rather spend it doing other things because, you know, I don't have all day to enjoy myself, and frankly, studying Mandarin would be quite a boring use of my free time. Then they get so angry, some of them will even go on and say, oh, but it's your obligation as a Chinese person to your ancestors. Oh, you know that, you know, this is something that we must do as Chinese people to get in touch with our heritage. Who cares? Like whether I was Chinese or Indian or African or Arabian, it doesn't really make a shred of difference what kind of person I would be today, you see. Had I been brought up in India, well, I'm sure you'd have Hindutva fanatics telling me I must know how to speak Hindi or Tamil, and, you know, had I been brought up in Africa, well, I don't know how fanatical African people are, but the point is, you know, your ancestors are dead. They don't hear you anymore. You know, when you die, your brain simply ceases to exist, and your consciousness seeps into nothingness, you see? So they say it's for your ancestors, it's your obligation to your ancestors, but your ancestors can't hear you, you know? I'm looking at it from a strictly biological, evolutionary perspective. It makes no difference to my ancestors whether I learn Chinese or not, you know, because Simply put, my ancestors are dead. If you wanna learn it, go ahead. But I have other more fun things to do with my free time. And it makes no difference to my life whether I know Chinese or not, because with or without Chinese, I can still do fairly well for myself. My brother is not even in the slightest interested in Chinese culture, like I am. At least I like Chinese literature, like Three Kingdoms, which I read in English. But he's done fairly well in Australia. He's a dentist. He doesn't know anything about Chinese culture. Has it made his life any worse off? Well, he's married to an Indian lady anyway, so whether he speaks Chinese or not doesn't really matter to his in-laws, you see. Yes, interracial marriage actually is a thing in the 21st century, you know. And his children, well, neither he nor his wife are going to force their children to adopt a Chinese or an Indian sort of identity. They'll just be Australian. Okay? And I don't think that either the Indian phonetics or the Chinese phonetics will be particularly interested in their children, since their children will be halfies. But the point is that the Peranakan himself, like myself, is a halfie, because our matrilineal lineage comes from China. Our patrilineal lineage comes from China. Well, as you know, they were not allowed to bring their wives along. The sailor men who came here in the Ming and Qing dynasties were not allowed to bring their wives along. So they married a second time to a local Malay woman and created this hybrid race known as the Peranakans. Well, they might have lost some aspects of Chinese culture for sure, like the Peranakan clothing does not even resemble Chinese clothing in any way. Historically, before British colonialism, Peranakans ate rice with their hands, not chopsticks. They might have lost some, but they still gained some, you see. Preserving cultural purity is simply a pipe dream, because throughout history there have always been intermarriages, migration from one place to the next, and people have discarded old customs, old languages, and adopted new ones. There's nothing you can do about it, you know. But I understand this is a diaspora insecurity thing, because Peranakans like myself don't consider ourselves to be Chinese diaspora. We consider ourselves to be native to Malaysia, right? I mean, ethnically we are Chinese, but still, you know, we don't have any attachment, most of us, to the motherland, you see. As I've said, and this is going to piss off a lot of little pigs, China is a distant memory. And Chinese in China don't feel pissed off. It's only a diaspora problem. But is a Malayanized Chinese any less Asian than a Han purist, culturally pure sort of Chinese? Not at all. You know, I still live with my parents, and I may even continue to live with them until after marriage. You know, I still practice Qingming, which is sweeping of the graves, not because I believe my grandparents can hear me or anything, but because, you know, I think it will make my father happy. And I'm trying to please my living relatives, my living relations. I mean, of course, I have fond memories of my grandparents, but no, I don't think that whatever I do is going to please them or displease them, simply because, you know, when you're dead, right? But I'm still a Confucian in the sense that I respect my parents' wishes, and I always consult them before I make a decision. Like a youth must be respectful to his parents at home and respectful to his elders abroad, right? I'm very respectful when I go to other countries. I don't try to shove my Baba Nyonya culture up other people's faces. And I think part of respect also means respecting the right of people to live their own lives as they see fit, as long as it's not harming anyone else. So I think for people who always claim to be culturally Chinese and sanctimoniously virtue signal about being more Chinese than certain other Chinese, you really could do in learning a thing about respect. That is to say, respecting people's wishes. If they don't want to learn Chinese, then let it be. But I think I'll just end this video in Malay, because I don't really care about the Chinese diaspora in America. This message is not really for them. The diaspora in America are not really relevant to me. So I'll say it in Malay. Saya tidak peduli sama ada kalian semua mau mempertahankan sekolah vernacular atau tidak. Apa yang penting untuk saya adalah ini. Adakah kalian semua sanggup bekerjasama dengan orang yang tidak diajar di sekolah vernacular atau tidak? Adakah kalian semua sanggup bergotong royong dengan orang seperti orang pisang ataupun orang yang belajar di sekolah kebangsaan atau tidak? Jikalau kalian semua sanggup bekerjasama dengan kami, saya tidak ada masalah dengan sekolah vernacular. Saya tak ada sebarang masalah dengan sekolah vernacular asalkan kalian semua sanggup bekerjasama dengan orang Malaysia lain yang tidak belajar di sekolah vernacular. Jikalau kita semua sebagai orang Malaysia boleh bekerjasama dan kalian semua boleh menghormati perbezaan di antara kami dan anda, then saya tidak nampak sebarang masalah dengan sekolah vernacular. Okay? So I hope the message is quite clear to all of you, yeah? I don't think it's acceptable to put down people who don't speak English. I really don't. Just like I don't think it's acceptable to put down people who don't speak Chinese. Because a person's race is simply, as I've mentioned, an accident of nature. So, what race you are is not really important. What matters really is your conduct. So, whether you're a Chinese who speaks Chinese or not, it really doesn't matter because your character is more important. So, the gist of this video, in case you are still obtuse enough to have missed this message, is that, you know, some people are not going to be as interested in the Chinese language or culture as you are. And that's fine, okay? We don't live in China anyway, we live in Malaysia. So there's no compulsion in whether one ought to speak Chinese or not, just because of some blood and soil kind of quantum, yeah? It makes no difference whether you speak Chinese or not, because we all speak Malay anyway. And I think Malay is a more important language to learn than Chinese, because virtually everyone in Malaysia speaks Malay. So it is the language that unites the masses. So if you wanna preserve your vernacular schools, that's fine. I just don't appreciate the holier than thou attitude in people who consider themselves more attuned to their cultural heritage than people who aren't. You know, it's patronizing, it's condescending when you try to offer people advice on how they can improve their lives when their lives are already going wonderfully for them. Okay? Whether or not we learn Chinese, it's not going to make our lives any better or worse. In fact, you know, we would rather be doing other things with our free time, frankly. You know, it doesn't mean we hate the language. It's just that, I rarely see the point in learning it beyond some metaphysical mumbo-jumbo. Since we all speak English anyway, and you understand what I'm saying without me learning any Chinese. Correct? Now, if my children want to learn it, that's their choice. Won't force them to learn anything, but ultimately you cannot force people to be interested in the same things that you are. And you know, if you do that, people are just going to get more resistant to learning it, because it's very off-putting when people try to force their interests on you, you see. All right, thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.